In the dim glow of oil lamps, where incense curled through the air like sacred smoke, there once stood an idol said to embody the divine itself. Its face was carved with precision, its presence commanding reverence, but it was the eyes that drew worshippers into silence. Two stones glittered like fragments of the heavens, diamonds so clear they seemed to pulse with life. They weren't mere ornaments. To the faithful, they were the gaze of a god, watchful, eternal, untouchable. Among them, one diamond glowed brighter, a stone that legends claim was born not from the earth, but from the breath of creation itself. This was no jewel. This was divinity crystallized. The priests bowed before it, pilgrims journeyed across deserts to glimpse it, and rulers spoke of it in hushed awe. It was said that as long as the god's eyes remained unbroken, the world around the temple would remain in balance. But what men worship, other men covet. In the shadows of that sanctum, a different story began to take root, one not of reverence but of hunger, a hunger that saw not the god's gaze but the gleam of unimaginable wealth, a hunger that whispered, "What if the divine could be stolen?" One night silence fell heavy across the temple, the chants ceased, the faithful slept, and a figure cloaked in deceit crept closer to the idol. In a single act of betrayal, hands reached where no mortal was meant to touch. The god's eye ripped from its socket, the sacred now desecrated. From that moment, the world would never see the stone the same way again. It was no longer holy. It was stolen. And in its place, a trail of blood began to follow it across continents. A jewel once worshipped as divine became a weapon of greed, betrayal, and empire. How did a stone pulled from the face of a god find its way to the Russian throne? And why do whispers insist it carried a curse, sealed in every hand that dared to claim it? This is not just the story of a diamond. This is the story of faith betrayed, power unmasked, and a curse disguised as a crown. If this opening already feels like something out of a dark legend, wait until you hear how far this jewel traveled and how much blood it drew along the way. Subscribe now before we unravel it all. There are places where silence is not absence but presence, where every echo feels like the whisper of eternity. In the heart of India, centuries ago, stood such a place. A temple carved in stone, rising like a testament to human devotion. Its walls told stories in reliefs, gods and demons locked in eternal struggle, their tales woven into the fabric of faith. Pilgrims approached barefoot, each step echoing reverence as the scent of sandalwood clung to the air. And at the center of this world of worship sat an idol unlike any other. This idol was not just an image, it was a vessel, a form believed to hold within it the essence of the divine. Every day, priests bathed it in milk and honey, dressed it in silks, and adorned it with offerings of flowers and gold. But no adornment commanded more awe than the eyes that gleamed from its face. Two diamonds, flawless, unblinking, staring into the souls of all who dared look up. Of the two, one captured imaginations more than any scripture could. It wasn't just light reflected, it was light alive. When torches flickered in the sanctum, the stone seemed to shimmer like the heartbeat of creation itself. Pilgrims spoke of it as the soul of the god, a fragment of divinity that bridged heaven and earth. To bow before it was to be seen by eternity. The diamond was more than sacred, it was symbolic. It represented the unbroken gaze of the divine, the idea that no sin, no injustice, no betrayal could escape the eyes of the god. Kings sought its blessing before war. Merchants prayed before it for fortune. Mothers wept before it for protection of their children. The stone was woven into the rhythm of life itself. And yet beneath its majesty lay fragility. For faith can be shaken, even shattered, when what is most sacred is threatened. A jewel so luminous, so coveted, could not remain untouched forever. To some, it was a miracle. To others, a temptation too powerful to resist. And somewhere in the distance, shadows had already begun to stir. Someone was watching, waiting, daring to imagine the unimaginable, stealing the eye of a god. Legends are born in moments of audacity, and some in moments of sacrilege. On a night shrouded in the thick hush of devotion, the sacred temple that had stood for centuries, its walls whispering prayers and history alike, faced its greatest violation. A man, cloaked not in humility but in cunning, approached the idol. He was said to have studied the temple for months, learning the rhythms of the priests, memorizing the sequences of chants, and watching the vigilant eyes of worshippers. Every step he took was a dance with shadows, every breath measured against silence. The plan was audacious, bordering on the impossible. This was no ordinary theft. It was a transgression against divinity itself. The diamond he sought was not merely valuable. It was revered, believed to hold the gaze of the gods and the blessing of generations. And yet desire eclipsed respect. With deft hands and unwavering precision, he seized the luminous stone, the eye of the god, ripping it from the idol's face. A gasp of air, the subtle creak of the stone dislodging, and centuries of sacred ritual shattered in an instant. The priests awoke to chaos, their chants cut off mid-verse, their hearts gripped by a terror that no mortal misfortune could explain. The temple became a theater of panic, sacred relics overturned, torches scattering light and shadows in frantic motion, and the echo of betrayal resounding like a tolling bell. Worshippers, confused and fearful, could not comprehend that the divine had been violated. Word of the theft spread like wildfire through nearby villages, whispers carrying not only shock but fear. That the god's eye, torn from its home, carried a curse for those who dared defile it. And the man disappeared into the night, leaving behind more than empty pedestals. He left the beginning of a chain reaction, a ripple that would travel across continents, touching kings and empires, leaving a trail of suspicion, intrigue, and blood. The diamond, once a symbol of devotion and spiritual guidance, was now a catalyst for greed, ambition, and deadly consequences. From the shadow of that temple, one question began to echo through history. How could a jewel, born of divine worship, become a talisman of human betrayal and imperial desire? The answer would unfold slowly, yet inexorably, shaping destinies far beyond the temple walls. Once removed from the sacred temple, the Orlov Diamond entered a world far removed from devotion and reverence. It slipped into shadows, carried by hands both careful and corrupt, traversing lands that spanned deserts, mountains, and seas. In the markets of Persia, the jewel shone in secret chambers, admired by princes who whispered of its brilliance, yet feared the whispered curse that clung to it like a shadow. The stories of its theft had already traveled faster than the stone itself, warning those who sought it that this was no ordinary gem. It was a fragment of divine power, stolen, haunted, and uncontainable. Merchants traded in whispers, plotting, scheming, and sometimes betraying one another. The diamond's path was paved with intrigue. One owner would vanish, another fall suddenly ill. Mysterious deaths became entwined with the legend, adding layers of fear and obsession. Tales grew in proportion to the stone's brilliance. Some claimed it brought ambition to men who had none, others that it delivered ruin to those whose hearts were already dark. Across the courts of Europe, collectors and aristocrats debated its authenticity, unaware that every attempt to claim it carried an invisible cost. By the time the Orlov reached the Ottoman Empire, it had become more than a jewel. It was a symbol of unrestrained desire, a magnet for greed, and a harbinger of misfortune. Diplomats and generals coveted it not for its beauty alone, but for the prestige it conferred, an unspoken acknowledgement that to possess the diamond was to wield power over men who feared the divine. And yet, each transfer deepened its reputation as a cursed object, a jewel that demanded blood before it would rest in the hands of mortals. Even as the diamond crossed continents, it retained the memory of its origins, the sacred gaze of the idol, the terror of the priests, and the echo of betrayal. Every hand that grasped it seemed to awaken that memory, forcing empires to confront the collision of human ambition and sacred violation. By the time whispers reached the halls of Russian power, the Orlov Diamond had transformed. It was no longer merely a treasure. It had become a legacy of obsession, a tangible fragment of human vice, and a stone that demanded attention, respect, and fear. And so, as it moved from Persia to the glittering courts of Europe, the question lingered: could any mortal truly possess what had been born of the divine? The answer, history would show, was fraught with peril. By the time the Orlov Diamond reached Russia, it had already earned a reputation that preceded it. A stone stolen from a god, whispered to carry a curse, and yet impossibly radiant, as though the light it had once captured in a sacred temple refused to fade. For Empress Catherine the Great, the diamond was more than a gem. It was an emblem of power, ambition, and the vision of an empire she sought to shape. Russia was a land of sprawling courts, of opulence and intrigue, and Catherine understood better than anyone that symbols mattered as much as armies. To possess the Orlov was to possess more than a jewel. It was to claim a fragment of destiny itself. It was Count Grigory Orlov, a brilliant and charismatic figure in Catherine's life, who delivered the diamond into her hands. Their relationship, woven with passion, political ambition, and loyalty, was as complex as the stone itself. The gift was intended to honor both love and allegiance, a dazzling manifestation of desire and strategy. When Catherine first held the diamond, legends say she felt the weight of its history pressing upon her fingers. Centuries of worship, betrayal, and power struggles condensed into one flawless, glittering eye. It was as if the divine gaze had shifted from the temple to her own court, now demanding respect, cunning, and careful navigation of the dangers it carried. The diamond became the crown jewel of Catherine's collection, mounted prominently in the imperial scepter, a symbol of her authority and vision. Yet its presence was not without tension. Courtiers whispered of misfortune, of the fates of those who had owned it before. Some claimed that even in the halls of the Russian palace, a shadow of the god's wrath lingered. The beauty of the stone, so brilliant and untouchable, seemed to hold a mirror to the ambitions of men and women alike, reflecting both awe and fear. For Catherine, however, the diamond was irresistible. It was a challenge and a triumph, a testament to her ability to seize what others had only dreamed of. Yet beneath the glitter and ceremony lay the irony of its origin, a jewel plucked from sanctity, now adorning the throne of a ruler famed for her brilliance, ruthlessness, and vision. And in that irony, a question persisted. Had Catherine claimed mere beauty, or had she embraced the weight of history, betrayal, and power itself? The answer would resonate across decades, as the stone continued to exert its quiet, immutable influence. Possession, as history has often shown, carries a price. For the Orlov Diamond, that price was measured not in coin, but in lives, ambitions, and the relentless shadow of misfortune. In Catherine the Great's court, the diamond gleamed like a silent witness to power struggles, whispered betrayals, and the fragile egos of those who walked the gilded halls. While Catherine herself appeared untouchable, her courtiers and rivals often found themselves ensnared in the invisible web woven by this singular stone. It was as though the diamond, once a sacred eye, now exercised judgment over mortals who dared to claim proximity to its brilliance. The legend of the Orlov's curse began to take shape not as a tale of supernatural terror, but as a pattern repeated with uncanny consistency. Count Orlov, whose loyalty had been instrumental in delivering the jewel, eventually fell from favor, his influence waning despite his previous triumphs. Other nobles who sought to handle or display the diamond without caution found themselves enveloped in scandal, their reputations collapsing like sandcastles under waves of court intrigue. Whispered rumors suggested that the diamond demanded more than admiration. It required obedience, respect, and humility. Those who disregarded this unspoken rule paid a heavy toll. Beyond Russia, the stories of misfortune followed the Orlov Diamond like a dark tide. Emperors and collectors in Europe who coveted it too eagerly met untimely deaths, accidents, or financial ruin. Scholars and chroniclers debated whether the curse was real or simply the result of human greed magnifying coincidence, yet the narrative persisted, gaining power with each retelling. Even in Catherine's time, visitors to her court felt the weight of its reputation. The The diamond's allure was inseparable from its danger, a duality that fascinated and terrified in equal measure. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Orlov's curse was its subtlety. It did not strike with immediacy or spectacle. Instead, it whispered, insinuated, and unfolded gradually, leaving its mark in the form of paranoia, misjudgments, and the slow unraveling of ambition. It was a reminder that the past is never truly past, that objects carry memory, and that a single act of sacrilege, plucking the eye from a god, can echo across centuries. To hold the diamond was to confront not just its beauty, but the accumulated weight of every betrayal, every ambition, every downfall that had touched it along its perilous journey. Centuries have passed since the Orlov diamond was ripped from the idol it once adorned, yet its presence continues to ripple through history, a testament to ambition, devotion, and human folly. Today, it rests in the diamond fund within the Kremlin, encased in glass, observed by thousands of visitors who marvel at its size, clarity, and almost unnatural brilliance. To them, it is a symbol of opulence, a gem of imperial grandeur, and a highlight of Russia's treasure troves. But beneath its glittering surface lies a story that stretches far beyond display cases and state ceremonies. A story steeped in devotion, theft, blood, and the weight of legacy. The diamond's journey from a sacred temple to the Russian throne is not merely a tale of ownership. It is a mirror of human history itself. It reflects the extremes of reverence and greed, the collision of faith and ambition. Pilgrims who once bowed before it as the eye of a god could scarcely imagine the lives it would touch, the empires it would influence, or the whispers of misfortune that would follow each of its owners. And yet, every visitor who gazes upon it today feels, however subtly, the echo of that sacred origin. Its brilliance is undeniable, but so too is the sense that this stone has witnessed events far beyond the ordinary human experience. In modern times, the Orlov Diamond stands as both trophy and cautionary tale. It has inspired poets, historians, and storytellers, each drawn to the duality it represents: divinity desecrated and power obtained through transgression. While its original context has been lost to the centuries, its history lingers in the imagination of those who understand that some treasures are never truly inert. They carry memory, consequence, and the moral weight of every hand that sought to claim them. Perhaps the most haunting lesson of the Orlov diamond is the way it forces reflection. Can a human truly possess what was once sacred? Can a jewel stripped from devotion ever be neutral, or does it carry the sins of its theft forever? The stone sits in silent judgment, a reminder that beauty alone does not absolve transgression, and that the line between reverence and desire is often as fragile as a diamond's edge. Even in stillness, it seems to watch, as though reminding us that the gaze of a god once stolen never truly abandons its watchful eye. The story of the Orlov diamond is not merely a chronicle of a precious gem. It is a reflection of humanity itself, of ambition, obsession, and the delicate balance between reverence and greed. From its origin as the sacred eye of a god in an Indian temple to its place in the opulent halls of the Russian Empire, the diamond has witnessed the extremes of human behavior: devotion, betrayal, love, and ruin. Its brilliance may dazzle the eye, but its history pierces the soul, reminding us that beauty alone cannot erase the consequences of desire. As we leave behind the tale of this storied jewel, we are confronted with a question that transcends time and geography. Can any mortal truly possess what was once divine? Or does every attempt at ownership carry within it a hidden toll, a reminder that some powers are never meant to be contained by human hands? The Orlov diamond, in all its splendor and infamy, asks us to consider the choices we make when faced with temptation, and the echoes those choices leave in the world. Perhaps the curse was never in the stone itself, but in the hearts of those who reached for it. Perhaps the true lesson lies in humility, in respect for what is sacred, and in understanding that history is shaped not only by rulers and treasures, but by the moral and emotional consequences that follow every act of ambition. If stories like this remind you that history is written not just in books, but in blood, devotion, and the silent judgment of time, then let this be your invitation. Like, subscribe, and share. Because every legend, every jewel, every untold story holds within it the power to challenge our understanding of the past and illuminate the choices we face today.